Welcome everyone, and thank you for coming today. This is such a special day, and I'd like to personally welcome you to the Roland Manteiga Road Designation Ceremony. And this ceremony and this designation is for Roland because I knew him, I respected him, and I absolutely adored him. But I want all of the Manteiga family to know that this designation is not just for your father, Patrick, but this is for your grandfather and your grandmother, and for your children and your family that continue the tradition. So thank you very much. Many of the Manteiga family is here today, and I'm going to we're going to recognize them, but I'll have Patrick do that in a few moments. But I want to welcome all of you here. I'd like to welcome my friends and my partners and all the officials, the elected officials that are here today, and it's quite a list. So I want to welcome Mayor Bob Buckhorn, State Senator Arthenia Joyner, Tampa City Councilman Harry Cohen, Tampa City Councilman Mike Suarez, Tampa City Councilwoman Yoli Capin, Tampa City Councilwoman Lisa Monteleone is the way we say it in Ybor City, County Commissioner Les Miller, Judge E.J. Salsinas is here. Police Chief Jane Castor is here. Public Defender and my good friend Julie Holt is here. Hillsborough County Attorney Chip Fletcher. Supervisor of Elections Craig Latimer. Property Appraiser Bob Henriquez. Regional Director to U.S. Senator Bill Nelson. Digna Alvarez is here somewhere. And of course our CFO of Florida, Alex Sink is here. Who did I miss? Judge Alvin Martinez is here. You were on the list. I went right over you. I'm sorry about that. I think I saw Judge Vance and just met Judge Vance. She's here. And Judge Berkowitz is here. And Judge Figueroa is hiding back there. All of you guys are elected officials. You should be up here with us. And also, my friend Guido Maniscalco is here.
Chloe's here.
And who? And Chloe Coney from State Representative Kathy Castor's office. Chloe, did I say? I'm sorry. Oh God, she used to be a state rep. Chloe, you're getting so tiny, I didn't even see you there. So how about that? Who? Judge Nash is here also. Thank you, Judge, for being here. Okay, so I want to tell you a little bit about Roland Manteiga. He was born in Tampa Heights to Victoriano and Ophelia Manteiga in 1920. He graduated from Hillsborough High School. Roland went to work for his father, the founder of La Gazzetta, in his childhood years as a paper boy. Even from a young age, he demonstrated that he wanted to help his family and his community. This was no more evident than when he enlisted in the military and he went to fight for our country in Japan and in the Philippines. When he returned to the community that he loved, he went to work at La Gazzetta once more. It was during that time when La Gazzetta became, and remains today, the only trilingual newspaper in the nation, with Spanish, English, and Italian. Now, I'm an Ybor City mutt. My mother's family are Spaniards, and my father's family are Sicilians. And I remember my abuelo on the porch, just down the street here, reading La Gazzetta on the porch. And then I would go to my nonno's house, and he was reading La Gazzetta on his porch or at his kitchen table. And I want to thank the Manteiga family for being their voice in both the community and both in politics, because my great-grandfather didn't speak any English, and my grandfather didn't speak any English. So La Gazzetta was their primary source of information for what was going on in the community, in the state, and in the country. Roland, I think he gained his voice at the paper, as I read this, when he started writing As We Heard It in 1954. He developed a real uncanny ability to predict the outcome of political races, and newspapers from around the state began quoting him and calling him for information. And As We Heard It goes on today. I think he passed on that ability to his son, Patrick, who does a very good job with predictions. So thank you, Patrick, for that. Roland took over La Gazzetta in the 60s and continued to be the driving force for political and community accountability until he passed away in 1988. Now, I remember as a kid going into the Tropicana, and also as a young student who started school here at the HCC campus, but I walked into the Tropicana and I was always mesmerized by this table that sat in the corner, and it had a big red phone on it. And I was just, as a kid, I just couldn't understand it or believe it. It just seemed like the neatest thing. And so when I got active politically, I was actually invited by not by Patrick, but by Roland to sit at that table. And I really was so excited. I was so excited to go sit at that table. I had arrived and I was allowed the privilege of sitting at the table. And the first time I sat at the table, I don't even know if Alex Sink remembers this, but she was sitting there at the table with Bill McBride, and we had a wonderful conversation. But it was a day of achievement in my political career that I was invited to sit at the Roland Manteiga table and take a look at the phone and be part of it all. So that was pretty exciting for me. Roland's impact has been felt throughout our community. The ripple effects of his life and his work will continue to be felt for many years to come. When Roland passed away, I attended the services, and I can't remember if it was the wake, Patrick, or if it was the funeral, but it was an election day. So when I went to pay my respects, I took off my little I voted sticker and I stuck it underneath his lapel because I wanted him to go a send-off knowing that he voted and he influenced my vote. I went to the National Convention as an alternate delegate in New York. Arthini, what year was that, Senator? In 1992. And I was lucky enough to be voted by my county as an alternate delegate. But I was a single mom, and I went and shared a room with I think 3 or 4 other women. We kind of squeezed into a room, and I was very cautious with my money because I didn't have a dime to my name, and I think that Roland saw that, and he pulled me aside one day, and he said, I have this $50 for you. He says, I don't want you to not go to dinner or not participate in having a drink with friends, but he recognized that I was there on a real budget, and he wanted to make sure that this little Latina girl got to experience everything that everyone else did. So I'm forever grateful. That was very kind and compassionate of him, and I will never forget that. We were so lucky to have him as an advocate in our community. He continued, in my opinion, him and his family were the voice for the voiceless, for my grandparents, for my great-grandparents. Today, I rise in honor of the Manteiga family, and I thank you very much for all that you have contributed to this community. Thank you. And I'm always so happy that I get to go and speak before Mayor Buckhorn, and I put it on the program like that. No one wants to speak after the mayor or after EJ, but I named the road, so I got to pick the program. So I want to welcome today our mayor, my friend, Mayor Bob Buckhorn.
Janet Cruz and I have been together for so long. She's been telling me what to do since 1991, and nothing changes, JC. First of all, let me introduce Ed Narain, State Representative Ed Narain, who just came. This is actually your district, isn't it? This is his district. And I don't know if retired Judge Ed Ward in the back was recognized. Judge Ward, it's good to see you. Who? No, we got Julie. We never forget Julie. Some of us may need her. Some of you have needed her. I won't mention any names, but
Really funny.
We know who they are.
Janet, you talked about that story about putting that lapel under Roland's collar. I have no doubt, being a good Irish politician, that he is still voting. Right, Patrick?
We try.
He just wants to participate in the democratic process. It doesn't matter whether he's on the earth or whether he's up here. He's still voting early now and voting often. So we could use his help in Broward, Palm Beach, and Dade, though, I can tell you. To all of you that are here today, I intend to be very, very brief. This is an opportunity, and I knew Roland When I got here in 1982, he was already a legend. And Sandy Friedman and Pat Frank used to drag me down there, and I would sit at that table, and he would explain to me the ways of the world. And in Roland was the story of Tampa. In Roland was the story of those immigrants who came to this community, be they Cuban, be they Spanish, be they Italian, who came here largely to roll cigars, who came here fleeing dictatorship, who came here oftentimes with nothing but the clothes on their back for a better way of life. And to come to a city that was largely Anglo, largely controlled by a certain segment of this city, and to not have a voice, Roland Manteiga and that paper became the voice of those immigrants. And those immigrants have given us an amazing city. Those immigrants are the shoulders upon which I stand as the mayor of this great community. Those immigrants built this community, but they were never allowed at the table in those days. And it took people like Roland Manteiga and Elvin Martinez and E.J. Salsinas and hundreds of others to stand up and say, not only are we here, but that we matter, and that our contributions matter, and that our children's education matters, and that our civil rights matter. And we don't have to go to the yacht club, we don't have to go to Palmacia, we don't have to be members of E Mystic Crew. But we are citizens of this country, we are citizens of this community, and we deserve to be heard, and we will be heard, and those voices and those hopes and those aspirations were heard through the pages of La Gazeta. So for all that we are today, in all of our shades and ethnicities and diversities and religions and orientations, there was always one voice for what was right. And it didn't matter what side of the street you were on. All that mattered is that you were willing to pull at that rope for a common outcome. Roland Manteiga gave this community and those immigrants that voice and that seat at the table. And this city is a better place because of it. And you should be proud. Thank you.
See what I mean? See what I mean? Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Mayor. Next speaker is my mentor in Tallahassee, a woman who gets things done. You would be surprised how silent but deadly she is. She very quietly moves around that. Silent? I think you'd be surprised how she gets things done very quietly then. How about that? My senator, Senator Arthenia Joyner.
Bob Zelton. I too sat at the table, Patrick, with your father. There's no story so important to me that I've got to ruin someone's life. This statement was made by the man we've come to honor today. A statement expressing a sentiment that many of us would do well to emulate. You know, he leaves behind a legacy of integrity, respectability, passion, and compassion that few men or women can even imagine. The in memoriam section of October 1, 1998 edition of La Gazeta newspaper, founded by his father, Victoriana, described Roland as a consummate political writer, an ardent Democrat, a compassionate advocate for the disadvantaged, a loving father, and a loyal friend. Upon his passing, the then St. Petersburg Times said that Mr. Manteiga was a celebrated man, honored by community groups, invited to serve on boards of important nonprofit organizations, and revered by his hometown. But he also had been an outsider who did his best to speak truth to power in his weekly newspaper. Truth tellers like Roland are always controversial, yet despite the controversy he created, he was caring and thoughtful enough to count people from all walks of life among his friends. There was a time when Mr. Manteiga must have been one of only a few American newspaper editors to hold court regularly in a neighborhood cafe. La Gaceta, a Spanish language paper founded as a daily in 1922, is known to be currently America's only remaining trilingual newspaper, published in English, Spanish, and Italian. Something for all of the people to read. Taking the helm from his father, Roland was truly the guiding force between La Gaceta for more than 50 years. Although most of them don't know it, today's political bloggers owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to Roland because he was so well connected. His column, as we heard it, became the local mid-20th century version of today's political blogs. Mr. Manteiga often broke stories and predicted events before the area's, quote, major newspapers. Having developed a reputation for honesty and fair play, he displayed no qualms about writing in defense of the Latin community or anyone else he considered to be an underdog in our society. As a member of the Florida legislature, privileged to serve the people of this district, I'm awed by the depth and breadth of Roland Manteiga's connections and the courage and conscience it took to stand for what he believed to be right. As a Democratic member of the Florida Senate, I can say with great certainty that we miss Roland Manteiga and his impact on Florida's politics. As we approach the King holiday, I'm reminded of something Dr. King said that truly applies to the life Roland Manteiga lived. In his A Testament of Hope, the essential writings and speeches, Dr. King said, there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular. But he must take it because conscience tells him it is right. Of all I know, and some of what I've heard, this was Roland Manteiga. We were all tremendously pleased when he was memorialized with a lifelike bronze statue on 7th Avenue. It is a great honor for me to stand here with family and friends today and others who knew and loved him to rename this street in honor of Roland Manteiga.
Right behind me is Pat Frank, our clerk of the court. Thank you for being here, Pat. Long glasses. Okay, and now our final speaker before we hear from the Manteiga family will be the Honorable E.J. Salcinas. Where'd he go?
He wants an entrance.
Did you not know you're on the,
Elvin is waiting to be called.
Elvin is on? Okay.
Elvin.
Okay, we have a little change in the program.
No.
Pretend that it says, oh, I did it again, Elvin. What am I doing? This is the second time today I've skipped over you, and I apologize. I want to honor and say I'm sorry to my predecessor, the famous Honorable E.J. Salcinas.
It's okay.
Elvin Martinez.
He's got a 3-hour speech. Mine is 4.
Oh. Sorry, Elvin. I don't know what happened. I keep doing that today to you.
Okay. All right, Janice, I want my seat back. Ladies and gentlemen, to honor Roland is a very, very easy thing to do because, number one, let's start off by saying he was a member of the greatest generation. Young men born in the 20s and teens who went to war, came home and made a difference in our communities. every great city has a special columnist. Chicago has Royko. We have Doris Weatherford. New York had Damon Runyon and Ed Sullivan, who later went to become a TV program. Every city, and we are fortunate that we had Roland Manteiga. Roland was not an easy person to get to know because, true to the name of his column, he didn't talk much. He listened. And that's why he was able to say, as we heard it, because he would throw you a little bait and then easily pull you in like a fish by you opening him up and telling him all kinds of things that he wanted to know, and very discreetly he used it very discreetly. He never embarrassed anyone unless he was just that kind of person. His political column was so important that when I first began life as a politician in 1966, my partner Mario Hersey and I had an office across the street from the West Tampa Post Office. And as a politician, and those of us who run for office know, your day doesn't start normally. It starts probably at 4 o'clock in the morning at the Cuban bakery watching them make Cuban bread, or at some construction project meeting the workers, and by 8 o'clock in the morning then you go and have a little coffee, and then you go out on the campaign trail again. My partner Mario Hersey was so involved that on Fridays he could not start the day without going to the post office box and getting, like I said, that. Well, they didn't box it at 8 o'clock in the morning. They didn't box mail at that time. And Mario would go back every 15 minutes. And finally, Mario was so interested in getting Roland's opinions on things that the workers at the post office at West Tampa would get his edition of La Gaceta and stamp every special stamp they had, special delivery, air mail, no postage due, everything was sent, so that Mario could get his newspaper, and then we'd get off starting the day by getting the latest news on what was occurring, and we were up on everything, what was happening in Plant City, and Ybor City, and West Tampa. We didn't have Town and Country then, but that was Roland. He knew what to do with the information he received. As we heard it, I remember some of my favorite columns was when he had some tidbit about the state attorney's office or something going on that he used to describe. A little bug in the salt shaker at the Columbia restaurant overheard this conversation. Or if not, a bug hidden in a secret napkin on the table at La Valencia heard this. And that was a style that he had, that he developed, and he, fortunately he's passed a lot of it on to Patrick. We're all fortunate for that. But that was Roland. He was a friend. Occasionally, it didn't happen often, but occasionally he would call me with some information that he knew I could use defensively, never offensively. He never gave me any tip about how to attack this or that, but he'd hear that they had planned to do something at a rally that I was going to attend, and he would advise me of that. Very, very seldom, but that was Roland. One of the things that I learned in my association with Roland is that he had probably 50 or 60 agents at any one time. People would say, oh, I got to get to a phone. Why? I got to call Roland. I got to call Roland. Some of them were great friends. One of them I recall all the time was Willie Garcia, who was instrumental. And many others. Victor Martinez was one that had a great relationship with Roland, because he would give him little tidbits about things that occurred in the medical field and other places. So, ladies and gentlemen, you all are very fortunate to be here at this dedication, as I am honored, in spite of Janet, to be one of the speakers. And thank you very much. And now, next time I think we ought to have benches, because my next speaker I think is EJ.
Thank you, Elvin. Can you imagine someone serving in the Florida legislature for 27 years? This man served us for 27 years, back and forth in Tallahassee. Thank you. Okay, now, we told him to be brief but poignant. So I am honored to introduce our next speaker, which is the Honorable E.J. Salcinas.
Thank you. But the first thank you should really go to Janet Cruz, who had the vision and the leadership to make this day happen. So let's hear it for Janet Cruz. Arthenia, you were very helpful to her, but we're very grateful for the leadership that Janet has given. And this is a special occasion. Occasion because we all will remember Roland for the rest of our lives. We knew the impact that he was having on our community. When I was told that there was going to be a street designation for Roland, I inquired, well, where are you going to designate the area? Certainly you're not going to put it there where La Gaceta is now. And I was quickly told, oh no, La Gaceta will be memorialized through the Manteiga family on Palm Avenue and 15th Street and going all the way to Nebraska. And I said, bravo, because the old timers that are here will remember that it was either just during the Second World War or immediately thereafter, this building, this beautiful Mediterranean building that we're looking at, was the home of La Gaceta, and that was where Victoriano Manteiga was waiting for his son to come back from the Pacific, where he was serving our country. Location is important, and this selection was especially significant because not only was La Gaceta on the first floor, but all of us as children were brought to the walk-in clinic upstairs of La Benéfica Española, where Dr. Carlos Barbas, whose son Circuit Judge Barbas and his brother Steve would frequently be playing in the waiting room. It was in that building, but at the south end, that Willie Gonzalez had Radio Center. And he had special trucks with huge amplification speakers. And when some news had to be given, Willie Gonzalez would go out with his Radio Center trucks and park in front of the cigar factories and give the cigar workers what was happening. Japan has just surrendered. The war is over. Germany has surrendered. The war in Europe is over. So right in that corner, we had the Manteigas, and we had the walk-in clinic, and we had radio center giving out information, and how valuable this information was. As you heard, initially La Gaceta was a daily, but in Spanish. And then Roland, when he came back, started taking more and more leadership role in La Gaceta and brought English and brought Italian. And the paper continued to grow. And as his father would get older and come in and out of that building, he would frequently tell Roland, look down the street where El Encanto Cleaners is located. The first room that I ever had in Tampa was a room upstairs. And then we're so close to the Cuban Club, which meant so much to the Manteiga family. And we're so close to the Centro Asturiano, which meant so much to La Gaceta. The Italian club is not far, and the old Centro Español is the club, not only the first club, but also on their 50th anniversary. It was Victoriano Manteiga and La Gaceta that published an annual that has become the historic documentation of that club. But La Gaceta leaves a great legacy. Roland died just after La Gaceta had published their special 75th anniversary edition. Now Patrick is at the lead, and he soon will be preparing the centennial edition of La Gaceta. 100 years existence in this community. So it is proper that we recognize Ybor City's favorite son. As Janet has said, he gave voice to the voiceless. The minorities didn't have a voice, but through La Gaceta, through Victoriano, through Roland, and now through Patrick, the minorities have a voice. So it's proper that we applaud the efforts of Janet Cruz and Arthenia Joyner in naming this section the Roland Manteiga Road, remembering Roland, remembering the legacy of La Gaceta, remembering real champions of the little people, the champions of the voiceless and the minorities, the defenders of the Latin community, their languages, their culture, their traditions, their loyalty, and their service to our nation and the betterment of Tampa. We will soon all be waiting, as Elvin was describing Mario going across the street, waiting on his Friday edition of La Gaceta. We will all be participating and looking forward to celebrating the 100th anniversary of La Gaceta that started with the Manteigas. Bravo to the Manteigas and bravo to Roland.
Thank you, Judge Salsinas. There's always a valuable history lesson when I hear you speak, so I appreciate you very much. Thank you. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to introduce someone everyone knows, which is the son of Roland Manteiga, Patrick Manteiga.
Thank you very much. I want to introduce my family first. My mother, Peggy, she's here on the front row. She's been a part of La Gaceta for many years. My wife, Angie, who actually started at the paper before I did. My daughter, Erin, who worked for us up until just a few days ago. Now she's at the courthouse. Her husband, David. My granddaughter is still napping, so she's not here, but she's the light of my life, Lola. My sisters, Vicky and Becky, could not be here. Neither could my son, Joey, or my daughter, Emily. Roland's sister Ramona had wanted to be here very badly. She's not feeling up to it, so she will be very happy that the city of Tampa is filming this so that she can see it later. I love my father. I'm very proud of the legacy he and my grandfather Victoriano left to me. And just like most children, if it were up to me, everything in Tampa would be named after them. But it's very humbling that Representative Janet Cruz, Mayor Bob Buckhorn, State Senator Athenia Joyner, Judge E.J. Salcinas, and Judge Alva Martinez share the same feelings about my father as I do. I thank you all for honoring his memory. I thank you all for being here. For most of his life, he recorded the life and times of Tampa. He celebrated in print the successes of his acquaintances and friends in the Latin community. He supported our community's rise in prestige and power. He made alliances with those who could help. He took those on in power who could hurt our community. He always championed the underdog, whether that was the poor, labor unions, minorities, women, or gays. Roland always wanted to take the side of the oppressed. He liked betting on the long shot. This honorary road name is for a life well lived and in trying to help others. Thank you all.
You're welcome. All right, I'd like to invite the Manteiga family up. We're going to stand here before the sign and do the unveiling, so please come up.